Donald Trump has got one day left to try everything he can to retain the keys of the White House. Doug Wead spent 2 years with the Trump family documenting his presidency for his book Inside Trump's White House, describing Mr. Trump as the hardest working president in American history. Mr. Wead is joining us now. Hello to you. Why did you describe him in that manner?
Well, from the very beginning, he took on the most intractable problems, interviewing Jared Kushner and others, including the president, about his first day, for example. They say on day one, he wanted jobs. He wanted, let's bring those hostages home. Let's end this war with ISIS from day one. And he's been able, I think it was the Washington Examiner who tracked 289 promises made and promises kept in his first year. That's pretty aggressive. I worked for 5 American presidents that I've known really well, had them in my home, co-authored books with them, been on White House staff with one of them, and I've never known any of them to be this ambitious at trying to get things done.
What is it about Mr. Trump that you like so much? Is it his ambition? Is it his personality?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I like him, and my views are transcendent from his personality in the day-to-day news. I like him because I spent 40 years working with the Bush family inside the American establishment. I saw the power of the banks, the power of the big corporations, which own the media, by the way, and I became disillusioned by the money that flows to big monopolies. When Donald Trump came into power, he upset those monopolies by deregulation. Monopolies depend on money from the central banks, the Import-Export Bank. They depend on government with stifling regulations that keep the mom and pop shops away and keep them as non-competitors. And that's how they make their money and where they get their power. They run the lobbyists that I had to deal with every day for 40 years. And I grew tired of that. I saw in Donald Trump someone who would break the dishes, turn over the tables. He deregulated so that small businessmen could compete. So you have a company like Boeing that used to automatically get a government contract that now has 40 competitors vying for the same contract, brings the price down, makes it more reasonable for the average person.
Why do you think that the media has been unfair to the president?
Because they're owned by those monopolies. You can still go online, who knows how much longer, and you can Google these companies and you can see what percentage of their income, many of them 40% of their money comes from China. You see how they benefit from regulations. I saw in government, both Democratic and Republican parties, when there was a recession, they'd pass what's called a stimulus bill. If you read a stimulus bill, Obama's stimulus bill was 1,000 pages. That's the size of War and Peace. If you actually read parts of it, you'll see that they deregulate. The politicians come to the lobbyists and say, what can we do to get more jobs? And the lobbyists will say, well, if all those regulations you pass, if you'll now give us a 10-year hiatus at keeping them, we'll be able to create jobs. So then the big companies get exempted from the very regulations that keep you or the average person from even getting into business. They themselves are exempted. So it goes for environment, whatever the regulations, so it goes.
You spent 2 years, I think, working with the Trump family in order to research for your book, Inside Trump's White House. You know him and his family very well. Do you think there is a scenario where even if he loses, albeit narrowly, that he will refuse to leave the White House to start with?
Look, we had 3 years of Donald Trump as a Russian spy. And now we have this concocted conspiracy. You stop and think about that. A Russian spy, that's the equivalent of Columbus crossing the ocean or landing a man on the moon. So these conspiracy theories, Donald Trump loves to tease and play at the media. I think the media does a disservice to themselves by taking the bait and running with it, because most people who observe these stories know what's true and what isn't true. Of course, he's not going to stay in power if he's voted out. Of course not.
So he's teasing us when he suggests that if it's close, he'll take it to the courts rather than stepping down.
Oh no! If there's a close election, it could go to the courts. It has in the past. That's not unique to Donald Trump. It's happened many times throughout American history. The corrupt bargain, which went to the House of Representatives. There's constitutional ways of doing things, but the implication of the way you worded the question, as I understand it, the way it's implied here by journalists in America, is that somehow he'll use the army and he'll stay in the White House and become a dictator. Dictators control the media. Does Donald Trump control the media? They control Hollywood. Does Donald Trump control Hollywood? Joseph Goebbels used to pick who could be in a movie and who couldn't. They control academia. Does Donald Trump control academia? He's not going to stay in the White House and rule as a dictator.
No, indeed not. I think that's probably a stretch from what I was saying, but I will finally just ask you, who do you think is going to win?
I don't know. And what's complicated is the American people are less trusting than they used to be of pollsters and national media. In fact, one of those polls, and how can you trust it, said just recently, just this month, 9% of the American people strongly believe in the national media, 33% strongly disbelieve. So we don't know that we can believe in the polls, but so many people have already voted. I would say that the trend towards Trump, which is beginning, you can feel it here in the United States, is not going to be sufficient for him to make it. But there's definitely in this last few days a trend toward him.
Okay, good to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it, Doug. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have to be very careful what I say because it'll get blocked. But this was written from a dissident in the Soviet Union in a concentration camp. He wrote, "When the truth is replaced by silence, that silence is a lie." I think you can figure out what I mean.